Good morning. Today is 4/17/2021. 2021. Does anyone have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, or just something that piqued your interest that you wanted to share with the group? And it doesn't have to be regarding what we've been discussing, but it can be. So feel free to ask your questions, as your questions usually drive discussion.
There were some questions that were brought to me during the course of the week in reference to what we had spoken about last couple, I guess, sessions with melanin. Let me ask you first, Barbara, then, did you have a specific direction you were going in this morning?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. And the questions that was brought to me was in reference to the melanin being a source of our identity. And I wanted to address that briefly, if I may. First of all, melanin is indeed identity for life itself. It is not just the identity for the African. It is identity for humans, but more importantly, for all of life. And I want to make that very, very clear because I don't want us to get into a nationalist idea in reference to melanin. Melanin is not about race. Melanin is about life. And I put emphasis on that because I remember back in the day when we were heavy into studying our history, there were those who equated melanin to being African, and that was it, period, which was the backdoor way of dealing with melanin on the basis of racism. And regardless of whose list it comes from, racism is wrong. So, in clearing that, and speaking to that rather, I also want to speak to the idea of identity. When we think of identity, we are talking about our being identified as the entities or as the creatures that we were brought into existence to be. Our identity is one of our spirituality. We were not created in the beginning to be human. We became human as a result of being created with the powers to bring into existence life itself. We became human as a process of giving the entity called Adam the opportunity to be fully expressive of Elohim, whose image it was created in. And if need be, I will explain that some more. However, I want you to also speak to identity in terms of religion, because we have been saddled with a false sense of identity through our religious settings. And that false sense of identity has given us, has created for us more problems than it has solved. And if I say that my identity is that of being human, then when I look at humans, they should have the same traits. If I say that I am a dancer, then when I look at other dancers, they should have the same trait in terms of being able to dance. When I say that I am a Christian or I am a Muslim, I don't know which one, or you don't know which one I'm talking about, because there are so many characteristics that are called Christian or called Islamic until we don't know what the purity of it is, if there is such a thing. So in that regard, we have been given a false sense of identity. Also, as Africans in this country, through religion, we've been given a false sense of identity. And one of the things that we have been labeled with that is truly a false sense of identity is that of being African American. We are indeed of African descent, but we are not American in terms of the potential that Americans are supposed to enjoy. We don't have the privileges that Americans have. We have the designation on our birth certificate because we were born in the nation, but the rights and privileges that are afforded to Americans, we do not enjoy those. And so that in itself also gives us a sense of false identity. The problem with identities that are given by men is that these identities can be changed at any point by the same ones who give them. However, if we look at our true identity from the spiritual perspective, that never changes. Regardless of what we may think, regardless of how we may feel about it, it never changes. It always remains the same. So I would I'll take any questions or comments now if there are any.
The issue about our true identity not being changed is a difficult one in the sense that so many of us don't know our true identities, and so and that's why we allow other people to define us and put us in a box that they define us to be. So until enough of us have an idea of what our true identity is, we will continue to react based upon whatever that prevailing definition is that we allow ourselves to submit to.
Excuse me. Absolutely, and I think that what we are doing in terms of making every effort to more clearly understand the book of the scriptures, we are putting it in the macro and offering greater opportunities for the embracing of identities, our identity rather. When I look at the demonstration that's taken place in regards to the police murders, when I look at the makeup of those groups of people in the streets, and then I listen at those who are genuinely desiring change, I see a giant step towards a common identity. And that common identity is that we are all human. Well, as it was with us, embracing that sin all of us as being human is the first step towards understanding or recognizing that we are more than just human. We are spiritual as well. So I readily embrace that, just what I see and the things that we are doing when we have these type of discussions or sessions. Any questions or comments about that?
Just a comment. What you reminded me of is of what truth is. When we know the truth, it makes us free. In other words, we are not confined and constricted any longer. Truth is expansive. It opens up. It's not. It is not something that places us under subjection to another, under the influence, the wrongful influence of another. It opens us up to know who we really are. And part of the living is then understanding and knowing how we must live in the midst of all of those that have no sense of who they are yet. And so it calls us to be compassionate and to love, because we were once there where we did not have any idea of what we were on a broader scale. We knew it in our innermost being, but that was all covered up and veiled, like so much stuff is. The distractions of life have done for other people, and even continues to some extent for us, because we don't know all yet. We don't see through that glass clearly yet, but it allows us to be non-judgmental and compassionate to others as we try to put things in the macro that will make truth speak to them when they are ready.
As you were speaking, Barbara, what came to me? Suppose that we, at some point, let's say tonight at 12 midnight, every one of us are going to have a single focus. And that single focus is to bring to an end this huge push for racial identity. Suppose we were to do that and focus all that energy there, and the results of it would become, we began to see men empowered. Their attitude shift towards inclusivity as opposed to exclusivity. How much difference would that make overnight? Excuse me. I raised that because I saw something this morning, an article that spoke to the America First caucus being established in Congress. And its express goal is to make sure that America remains an Anglo-Saxon nation. Suppose our focus of energy with that the desire to shift that, to change that. Suppose that we were to do that and it happened overnight. I wonder what would that look like in relationship to religion and education, etc. How would that be impacted? Because I do believe that the true change comes when education and religion are impacted. And if you think about it, this nation, the people in this nation have a desire to help each other overwhelmingly. The ones who are fostering the separation are those who are elected in enclaves from enclaves of power because of gerrymandering. So what we are seeing is somewhere between about 200 people in power fostering all the bad behavior that we are experiencing. And I call bad behavior, I'm talking about the behavior that perpetuates all of the isms that are antithetical to who we are created to be. Any questions or comments about that?
Well, I got another comment since everybody else is mulling things over so far. I believe we have already put into the macro when we talked about our knowing our identity as Elohim, and we meditated on that back a while back. I believe that in the macro, and that's been part of what we've seen as we saw change take shape within our very view, not hundreds of years, but days, not thousands of years, but months. The shift that has occurred.
I wonder if, and I agree with you, Barbara, 100%. My mind is racing this morning for some reason with thoughts because of what's going on. Are we willing? Are we still willing, rather? And I'm sure we are, to say, no matter what it takes, we are still willing to endure it for the purpose of change. Why do I raise that? Because right now, I see change, yet my heart bleeds for these families who are still having to endure the murders at the hands of policemen and mass shooters with seemingly no sympathy at all from those who are in a position to change it. So I wonder, excuse me, if we are willing to hold on to that, whatever it takes, even if it takes wiping every one of them off the face of the earth. It don't matter what it takes. It does not matter. We want this thing to end. We don't know how to end it ourselves, but our desires have brought us this far. So how deep are those desires today? Like we've had 40-plus mass shootings since the 16th of March, and 147, I think it is, since January. How do we, how committed are we to bringing this to an end? Because we know when we start talking about we're willing to do anything, then what we've had to endure has been very difficult. How much more are we willing to bear to get this thing done? And maybe I'm just I'm just venting, I don't know. But it's not rhetorical at all. I would like to get some opinions, ideas, thoughts about that. Because quite frankly, I am been ready, but more so now than ever before because of the burdens that people are being forced to carry with these things going on like this. And I'll address the George Floyd thing later on, but okay.
Any thoughts or comments from someone else? I feel like Pastor and I have been having a little dialogue here, and it's not just for the two of us.
Good morning, everyone, and this is George and Philly. We've had some conversation a little bit earlier this week, Pastor. And we were talking about in terms of community organizers, and I don't want to look at it in terms of just specifically in that role, but putting ourselves in places where we need to be listening and being able to move in the spirit, to create that change. And so I think that there's things that we're seeing, things that we're experiencing, but being aware of how to listen in the spirit and to be able to put it in the macro where we can be able to see it. And so I think that was something that was on my spirit this week in terms of just some of the gun violence and some of the things that are happening, in Philadelphia. But I think it's more than just, wanting to just run out there and just march or something, but just being able to be sensitive, how do we combat that? So that was just something that on my spirit this morning, when, you were just mentioning, how do we approach it or how do we think about it? And I think all of us are going through experiences that we are contemplating in terms of what can we do to make a difference. So I think this collective conversation is helpful because it's truly, something that is impacting, I think on all of us. So I just wanted to share that thought of how do we be sensitive, how do we be alert if that resonates or if that, again, relate to anybody in terms of how they're looking at it. I'm done.
Good morning. This is Mary, and I just want to share. I think about what we're seeing now. More people are being impacted by the shootings. Reminds me of back in the day with drugs and how as long as it's just one population or one section of the community being affected, then everybody else goes along and everything is fine. Now we're seeing that more and more people are impacted by the gun violence. It's not just African Americans or people of color. It's now going across the community in such areas you wouldn't expect. So this is how change come about. It never changes until more of the population is impacted. And now we're seeing it. Now things are going to change. These people in Washington can do whatever they want to, but we can organize and get it together and get rid of these guys. Too many people dying. And Biden said it's embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It's like I don't know, embarrassed is not, he just said that, and all these people died and he embarrassed. No, I'm hurt. I just lost for words. And that's what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments as well, because you captured the essence of what we're talking about. The essence is not the way that this is defined by somebody else. We have the ability to feel the empathy, to feel the compassion. And that's what I hear you expressing, that it's deeper than just that embarrassment. Because when it happens to somebody else, it hurts me as well.
And I excuse me, I concur wholeheartedly because to say that you're embarrassed because all these people are being killed is to say that you have no sense of empathy or sympathy or compassion for life itself. and that seems to be the norm with that Caucasian male. Would you mute your phone, please? The other night when this young man, the 20-year-old young man in Minnesota, was shot, was killed by the policewoman. The first words out of Biden's mouth were, "There is no need for violence and rioting," before he even addressed that this young man had been murdered or killed, however he would have addressed it. So I don't think this is accidental or coincidental. I don't think it's due to senility. I think it is reflective of the attitude of that Caucasian male. It shows us that it is not a party line thing. Both of them are saying the same thing. They're just saying it differently. One is acting it out more in a much more hurtful manner than the other, but both are saying the same thing. So I concur wholeheartedly, Mary, with what you said and Barbara's response to it. So maybe the desire should be for a change in the presidency. And that desire could be changed in terms of physicality or attitude. I don't know. But I do know that one of the things that increased the sale of weapons was when the Congress passed a bill that freed manufacturers from liability, protected them from liability for the deaths that occur with their weapons. If they would repeal that, that would change things tremendously. There's nothing like financial accountability to change the attitude of people who are greedy. Now, this morning, I think this is more of a conversation geared towards trying to understand the mindset and correct the mindset of a system that has increased its culpability. Has begun to reveal, its culpability in all of the dastardly things that are taking place within the confines of this nation. Right now, it doesn't appear that the powers that be even care whether it is in the African community or in the white community in terms of mass shootings. Now, individual shootings is different, because when you look at the kid, the 13-year-old who was shot in Chicago, the first thing out of his mouth was that he's a member of the Latin Kings, and he had a gun in his hand. When that kid turned around, he did not have a gun in his hand. Then I look at video where a white man, police stops him. He drags the police with his truck. Nobody shoots him. They chase him down and arrest him. I look at a video, I read an account, rather, in Lawrence County, where this white woman shoots at the police and runs into the woods. They chase her down and arrest her. Not one shot was fired. So it is not the same when it comes to white policemen dealing with white people. I look at an account where a policeman of color shoots a white woman, he goes to prison. And I read the account where the Capitol policeman who was black shoots a white woman, and they consider arresting him, and he's there protecting the capital. So these are the contradictions in this system that must be addressed, and in addressing them, they must be changed. You say, well, what does that have to do with Jesus? Hello? What happened? Jesus. Hello? Do I have anybody?
I'm still on.
There were a lot of people that could not get in. They were texting, and now they're getting in. It all just popped in at once.
Okay. Okay. I thought I had lost everybody. What does this have to do with Jesus? Well, when Jesus said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's, that's more than just money, even though he was speaking of the tax, of course. If we're going to render unto God that which is God, then it is imperative that we make every effort not only to point out the issues that we see in this society, but also make every effort to correct them. And the rendering unto our Creator is the rendering of ourselves. It's the rendering of our so-called free will, so that we will be more effective in how we approach this dilemma called life in America. If we continue to march in the streets and to seek redress at the hands of those who are creating the problems, then we are rendering to Caesar that which should be rendered to God, meaning that our approach should be two-pronged. It should be spiritual, but it also should be directed toward the government as well. It cannot simply be directed to a government with the expectation of change. What I'm saying is this. It takes more than the church to tell us to go vote. It takes the church understanding, at the very least, seeking to understand the spiritual essence of who we are and the powers that we have. Jesus was very much aware of who he was created to be. Jesus was very much aware of who humanity was created to be. And being aware of that, he knew that Caesar was not aware of any of that. And if you really think about it, Jesus being a melanated man, Jesus being an African, being of African descent, Jesus being there in Africa understood the spiritual nature of what was happening, and said, render to the Romans, the Europeans, that which he favors or that which he worship, give it to him. But make sure that you do not detract from what belongs to our Creator. Now, and I know by me saying that Jesus was a melanated man, some people lose their mind when I say that. It's funny how there is no issue with Jesus saying that Jesus was a European, but it's an issue when we say Jesus was a black man. It's funny how the truth ruffles feathers, and a lie makes everybody calm again. I want us to understand that every single thing that in the scriptures that took place, especially in relationship to Jesus, was Jesus facing the same things that we face today. It was, if you read the history of the days that Jesus was in the earth, the same thing that the policemen are doing to us now, the Romans were doing to the Palestinians then, the Africans then. And I use those terms purposely because there is no such thing as a Jew. when we talk about remedying the issues that we encounter every day, we are talking about what Jesus did. Think about it. When Jesus walked the earth, Jesus could not go into the house of a Roman unless he went into the back door, and he had to be invited in at that time also, because the same type of racism that existed now existed then. So all that we are talking about are the principles that are necessary for us to bring peace and harmony to humanity, and in this illusion of racism, this illusion of exclusivity. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. Any comments or questions about that?
This is Evelyn. I have a comment, but it's not. Well, it has what you're talking about, but seeing the activities that took place this week, it really is. It's heavy on my heart. And am I wrong to say people don't change until the situation comes to their front door? That was my child that was killed this week. That was my brother. That was my sister or whoever. And my question again is, don't people change, or do some people change? Well, let me just go back. Some people change when things come to their front door, the situations do. And I had the attitude, maybe things should start coming to their door so they can start changing. I don't know. It's like I'm out there. My mind is just really racing.
I think that there are people, for the most part, people don't. But I see a bigger opportunity. I see more people seeking change now than I have in the past. I see, when I look at the number of people who's putting it on the line for change with these police shootings, I see that more so now than ever with Caucasians. I've never seen that many young white people in the streets in my life, except for during the Vietnam War. But on behalf of the change for Africans, it's the first time I've ever seen that in my life. So it is at our doorstep. But I do understand clearly, Evelyn, what you're saying. I do understand the question that you're raising. I also understand that if we cease to talk about it or keep it in the forefront, then nothing will ever change. I wish that I could speak the right words, raise the right one, and all of this, in harmony just appears instantaneously. It hasn't. And I'm not pessimistic at all about it changing. I just feel the weight of the pain of those who are burying their children, burying their uncles, burying their family members simply because of the color of their skin. I'm feeling the weight of that more and more. The idea of a kid being killed, and the first thing you can say about him is that he's a gangbanger. Okay, so what? His hands were still in the air when you shot him in the chest. These kinds of things, this kind of weight that I'm experiencing, sometimes it pushes my thoughts away from seeking to understand the scriptures, and pushes my heart to how long. And I know that change has taken place, yet the manifestation of it appears to have taken, appears to be taking the pace of a snail. And I want to know how to give it the gallop of a horse as opposed to the pace of a snail. And I don't quite see that yet.
May I make a comment to just put things in perspective? What we see now is related to technology, et cetera, so that we can see things in real time, understand them and know them in real time. But this is not new. It's been happening probably in much greater numbers in the past, but we were unaware of them. And so my comment is simply to remind us that we see this and we feel it as we should. We're compassionate, but it shouldn't change our primary focus. It shouldn't distract us from our primary focus. We should feel it and still stay on focus. That whatever is happening, change is taking place, and it's taking place for the betterment of all humanity. It's just that it's just so in our faces now because we have access to it.
Absolutely. And that it's, I guess it's something like that help us to remain focused on the change that's needed.
Pastor?
Yes.
I wanted to add something. Good morning, this is Kathy. I was thinking about when the mass shooting took place in Rock Hill a couple of weeks ago. It was an African-American male that killed 6 white families, a doctor, his wife, the 2 grandchildren, and the 2 air conditioning men who just happened to be at the house who were working in the yard on the air conditioning unit that day. And of course, he had been my doctor, so I was very familiar with who he was. But I looked at the response of the community. Senator Ralph Norman, who is from Rock Hill, actually made the comment, and he is one of the ones that is always against changing the gun laws. He made the comment that all these shootings that happened, and in other words, it never really impacted him until now, and now he felt this deep sorrow because it came to his door. He actually made that comment, and the community was in an uproar because it was an African-American male who had taken these lives, and of course they're now saying it was based on CTE because he was a professional football player. But what I found the most amazing thing that happened out of all of that was the family posted a post to the community and told them our prayer should be for the Adams family. And the Adams family are the mother and father of the young man that did the shooting. And in other words, from a place of love, we feel grief for everyone. Of course, we feel the loss of our own family members, but this is not anything that is going to tear our community apart, and it's going to bring our community together. That came from the family, from those parents who lost their children, as well as their own children. Their mother and father. So when I looked at that response, it's so hurtful to see these things happening, and every time I see it, it hurts so much. But then I also recognize that a Ralph Norman experience, these things keep happening because they have put on blinders and are not being compassionate to the needs of what's going on around them, and the community's cry for gun control and the community's cry for unity and oneness and humanity in every aspect of life, not just when it is the Caucasian that's being impacted. But I found his response enlightening, but even more enlightening was the response of the family who was actually going through the loss at that time. So I say all of that to say that even out of that pain and agony, they were able to shine a light on being their higher self and saying, no, this isn't about race. This is about hurting humanity. And we need to be feeling the hurt of all of those who were impacted by these losses of life. And we need to come together as a community. So I think even that being said, I'm just sharing that to kind of show that there was one man that said, I did not even feel any kind of way about all those other murders until this happened. And then you have a community response saying, no, but we're going to embrace this family, because the other thing was these are neighbors. The shooter lived 3 doors down, like from the people that he killed. And that family had to live in that community. And it could have been really hard for that family. But the doctor's family was like, no, we're going to embrace them because that's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to share those thoughts, because it is hurtful to see all of these things happening. And I am like everyone else. I'm like, how much longer? How much more? But I found it very insightful that Ralph Norman finally felt something, because they have this saying that, guns kill people. Well, people kill people, not guns. And so it's not taking anything. We shouldn't have to write laws to control guns and all of those things. But maybe that opened his eyes to say, we've got to do something, because this can't continue as is. And I just wanted to share that this morning.
And that's responding to Evelyn as well about it coming to their door. People not seeing it until it comes to their door. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Angela. I had just wanted to share. I had a thought with everything that's going on around the world. I was just thinking, what if we had more? I mean, we have it, but to put it out there in the micro, we have more spiritual experiences instead of more us being spiritual in the physical body, and we having more well, some of us, but as a whole though, having more physical experiences, but we need more spiritual experiences so that love, peace, and balance can be the way that it needs to be. And then another thing I just thought about a while ago, I thought about going back in Genesis, where how Pharaoh and how God parted the Red Sea, and how it was just what they went through. It wasn't, but when I guess at the time when it was time for things to change, and God parted the Red Sea, but I don't really understand the significance of parting the Red Sea, but I do know that change occurred for the people. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Angela. Just a brief comment on what you said. All of us, what we're talking about right now can symbolize the Red Sea in our lives too. It is that thing that looms up to seem insurmountable, unsurpassable, uncrossable. Whatever that thing is, whether it's the mass shootings or whether it's murders of Black people for being Black, or whether it's even in other countries like Myanmar, where people are being slaughtered, or Brazil, where people are dying at a much more rapid rate from COVID because of the government's inept attitude of doing nothing. All of those are symbolic of Red Sea experiences in people's lives. And so what it says to us is that a wound is much more powerful than any of that. And folk have to get to the point where they understand and know that. And that's what we're trying to put in the macro, as you say, the spiritual essence of who we are, and the fact that we want other people to experience that essence, so that they understand that they are connected to a source that is all powerful, and that all of this, if you look at it in terms of time in this realm, all of this is happening, but it's a very short time when you compare it to eternity, eternal time, or things happening thousands of years from now even.
I think we've said this in other lessons, but we are the consciousness for not only America, but for the entire earth. And maybe we haven't focused on that and know what that means. The thing that the president said about being embarrassed, he didn't say that so the masses could hear it and some agree or disagree. He said it so we could hear it and focus on that. And one of the messages in that is, please remember that this is not a political thing. It's nothing that that office can do to take you or help you to see the goals that you seek. Consciousness. I'm reminded that the first couple of times I went to Rock Hill to visit Kathy, the road to get there from here was probably one of the most dangerous roads that I ever taken. It was full of hairpin turns and extremely dark, and it wasn't a road that I was comfortable on going at night. And I commented on that road every time I drove it to either Kathy or Pastor. And one night, a young man was killed on that road. And he was the son of, Pastor knew who he was the son of, but someone who was extremely important, I guess, in the state. That death got that road changed. Although there had been others that were hurt or killed on that road, that death made a difference. And as Evelyn has said, and Angela and Kathy and everybody else, the hurt and pain that you feel, you feel it because you are the consciousness of the earth. You feel it when someone in California who you may not even be able to pronounce their name is gunned down. You feel his and her pain. And I'm trying to sit here and think of how or what we should do to spread that consciousness, to spread that awareness, to spread that pain, because that's how change is going to come. Do I want something to happen to the president's family? Of course not. I don't want anybody to suffer like the family did in Rock Hill. But it moved them to a place that they may not have been moved to otherwise. And if that is what it takes, you don't want to see that. I wonder, as I say, as Angela said, from the spiritual side, what more can we do to spread this consciousness so that this can end, that people start seeing that they are loving kindness, and that is the answer, and not waiting until someone loses a loved one before they decide they want to change a gun law or change the way they handle current situations. I'm reminded of several things. You look back at it and you say, it wasn't that long ago people were really, really bashing people who were called homosexuals. And I mean, taking their lives, beating the heck out of them and taking their lives. And through prayer and through education and understanding, that consciousness was spread. And don't get me wrong, it's still not 100% and may not be for a long time. But change has come in that direction. And I just hear us talking, and I don't think as we know enough people understand and know how to feel the pain that you are describing, that we talk about seemingly weekly, and so I just wonder if there's an answer, a solution, or how we can spread this consciousness, because it has to be a spiritual thing. It has to be a thing that you want people to see and understand and feel what's going on, as though it's happening to them or some of their loved ones. But you don't necessarily want it to happen, because that takes too long and that's too painful. You don't want everybody to have to go through this, as the family had to in Rock Hill. And I don't know if there's an answer how you spread that, or how you get others to include the fact that they are Elohim, and this is no coincidence that you feel this way. It's how you should feel when there is a death of this magnitude in the earth.
Right. And to others, of course. Suppose that is the purpose of these catastrophic events. The purpose of it. Think about it. Nothing really changes for society unless there's a murder, unless there is brutality. Why is it that people simply cannot see that something is wrong and change it? It appears as though, regardless of where it is, the masses don't get involved unless it's something that's brutal. Where does that come from? Why is it that way? And if that is the catalyst that makes everything, makes policy that's beneficial, then is it wrong to desire it? Example, the road you were talking about, how many lives has it saved over the years since that one life was lost on that highway? And the guy's father was a friend of one of the state senators who had refused to agree with funding for that road, by the way. So, is it wrong to desire that catalyst if that's what it takes? Because if you are willing to give up the life in this body for the benefit of humanity, then why is it wrong to feel that if someone else has to do it, in terms of those who are in power, who are making sure that things remain as they are, if they got to die, so be it. If it takes a family member, whether it be Biden or anyone, why would we not want that to happen? Is that being inhumane? And that's not rhetorical. I'm serious to want to talk about this.
I don't know how.
That is going back. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
No, ma'am. You go right ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was only going to say I don't necessarily know the answer to that, in the sense of when we say whatever it takes and we leave it at that and we're not shaping it, then whatever plays out, plays out. But I think the thing that resonated with me that we kind of walked right through just now, when Angela said we need to have more spiritual experiences, a light bulb went on for me, because out of my emotions, those things that are happening that I am looking at all around me that grieve me to the very core of my existence. I sometimes don't see that as a spiritual event taking place because it's so hurtful to me as a quote unquote human, until I don't even think about the spiritual nature of what's going on in that moment, because it just keeps happening over and over and over, and it's just so tragic. But when she said that, the first question was, and how are we framing these things? If we are spirit, then everything that we're experiencing is a spiritual event. So based on what she said, is it that we are framing these things in the wrong way? And that leads me to what you were just asking too, Pastor. If I don't get to shape it, and if I say whatever it is, let it be, so that it will be for the benefit to all of humanity, and that we all will be seen as equal, and whatever else it is that we're asking for, then it is a spiritual event, is it not? Or am I seeing that wrong?
I think all events are spiritual. There was a spiritual awakening. Whenever there is an awakening about circumstances, that's a spiritual manifestation. The death of Emmett Till, the murder of Emmett Till, was an eye-opening experience. That was a spiritual event. And in reality, that was the quote-unquote beginning of the civil rights movement. So I do see these events as being spiritual, and maybe we do need to shape them different. Not shape them. I'm sorry. We need to refer to them differently. We need to see them for what they are, and search for the right approach, because words are very powerful, and there are times I know that I, as well as most of us, for that matter, send confusing signals to the universe because of our vernacular, because of the way we form our thoughts. So how to rightly and righteously form the thoughts is sometimes puzzling, or sometimes elusive at best. So I don't know what the answers are. I really don't. I wish I did. But I do feel the struggles of those who are on this call. The struggle not so much in being how am I going to get through this, but the struggle in how are we going to make a positive impact on humanity. Anyone else?
I have a question. This is Evelyn. So I don't want to send the universe mixed signals, but my question is, do we send mixed signals when we are expressing how we feeling because of the impact that's happening with mankind? Or how is it that we're sending mixed signals?
I think verbiage more than anything else. I don't think we intentionally sending mixed signals. I don't think it's mixed signals in terms of the way we once did it. Lord, I trust you to do all things for me, and then I'll make it our desires known and come into the altar every Sunday with the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that I trust you. Well, if you do, why you keep coming? I think it's different than that. I think our struggle is with words in terms of how we express our thoughts. Now, don't get me wrong, the universe does not just hear our words, it knows our heart as well, what our desires are.
Mm-hmm.
And when Ron was talking about not wanting things to happen to anybody's family, and I feel the same way. Now, my question to me is, if I say, whatever be, let it be, but I don't want it to happen to their family, then is that a mixed signal? That's a struggle for me.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than run that risk, I just leave it for Kathy, the way she stated it earlier, and that is when we say that whatever happens, whatever it takes, rather, then whatever happens, that's just what it is. I can embrace that wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is with a great clarity. And that clarity being, if it has to impact somebody's family structure, then so be it. Now, keep in mind, when we say whatever happens, look at the amount of families, the number of families who have been impacted by this. Look at the Barbara stated how this has always happened. We're seeing more of it now because of social media. Yes. So what did we do when we said whatever it takes? Then it became more and more public than it has been in the past. There has never, to my knowledge anyway, in the history of this country, there has never been the prosecution of a police officer like the prosecution of children. Never. And very few are talking about it, but at the helm of the prosecution team is Keith Everett, the African representative, who is now the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. So our desires are being reflected. I don't know about everyone else, but my struggle is not that it's not happening. My struggle is I go back and forth with the pace of manifestation, more so than I do with trusting it happens. I know who I am. And in knowing who I am, is there more that I can be doing that I don't know about? Is there something different, or is there a different approach that I'm not aware of? What is it that Jesus was able to do to bring about immediate results that we are not doing, or not? Or are we supposed to even do anything? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Can I?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ron.
Can I look at it from a slightly different perspective? The pace of it and the manifestation. We are spiritual beings, and the physical part of us is the manifestation of that. We are spiritual first, but the physical part of us is a type of separation. That is where the humanity comes in, and that in lies the problem. Because with the manifestation, the physical, it shows separation, and it shows that if I choose to, I don't have to be connected to you. I don't have to be a part of you. And as long as me and mine are taken care of, I don't see that connection. But the connection can never go away. The connection is the spiritual part of you that belongs to the Creator. It comes from the same source. And the thing that keeps those millions and millions of people who are in the earth connected, or for lack of a better way of seeing this, looking at our feelings and emotions. Our feelings and emotions is what keeps us connected and keeps us together. And as Pastor was saying, the pace of it, I think, has a lot to do with that. For example, usually if I see something, I hear something, if I feel hurt and helplessness, nothing happens. Now, I may later collect myself and come back and say, okay, this needs to happen and that needs to happen. But my initial reaction, because I have moved to a place that I try daily without wavering to operate in the soul, I think that impact catches on quickly. So you feel helpless. So helplessness comes to the situation. Another example, a few weeks ago, Pastor has said this to me on a couple of occasions. You're not going to have to work Saturday. You're going to be on. The first time he said it, the first thing that hit my mind was, well, they already said we got to work. But the pastor said it. But my initial thought was, you're going to have to work because they said you got to work. So after that, after I tried to say, you know what he said, I don't have to work out, it was too late. My initial reaction set the pace for what was going to happen. So when we talk about this and making differences, because the next time he said it, I caught it rather quickly. You aren't going to have to work today. Good. Now you can go do this and that, all these things you need to do on Saturday. You can get these done as well. So what I'm saying is our feelings and emotions, I think, has a lot to do with what happens and the pace of the things that happen. I am Elohim. I am the universe, and I am the energy that makes changes. That has to be first and foremost what's in my mind. The words that I speak only, and this is my opinion, and please, if I want to hear from others who don't agree or do agree, if you can straighten this out for me. I think the words that I speak are nothing more than the manifestation of my feelings and emotions, which shape my thoughts. My thoughts ride on that. So when something happens, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody sending the universe, mixed signals, I feel empowered in one way, and then I cut the TV on or somebody says something to me, and I feel deflated. And I'm like, what is, so I'm trying to combat that. I'm trying to see what it is I'm supposed to see, where is that I supposed to live. And that goes back to my question that we were talking about last week. I want to be able to stay there. I want to be able to stay at that place where my mind is on alert and I'm not moved to a place that things shock me and make me feel like there's nothing you can do about this. So I hear what everybody's saying, and I think this is a good place we are, and I think we're on to something here. And if you agree or disagree, I'd just like to know how others feel about that.
This is Barbara. When we have these discussions, and they are so fraught with emotion and feeling, because that's part of who we are in this realm, I go back to what we decided that we would do. And I go back to the words that we seeded the universe with, which I think were powerful kinds of words. I think Catherine mentioned that, there's certain things that we have to just let evolve the way they will. And whatever happens, happens. What we said is that we put in place the order and structure to remove every obstacle that stands in the way of balance, unicity of mankind. mankind seeing and knowing the Elohim that it is, unselfishness. And then we said this. We said that, and that this is going to be accomplished by any means necessary. And that any means necessary reflects on balance, unicity, etc. And so stepping back from the emotions and the thoughts that are tied to the emotions, as Ron put it, stepping back from that, then we have to put that perspective, that space in there, so that we can see the bigger picture. That yeah, I'm going through, the world is going through, people are going through, they're hurting. We know that, we understand that. But we put all of this in motion. We get it. Because what we believe is that we're going to get the harmony and the balance out of all of this, whatever it is, and whatever the means is. So while I have the concern and the hurt and emotion, this is what I do to remember what we said. And I believe what we said was important. I believe that it was for the betterment of mankind. And so that's what I remind myself of.
I don't know about anybody else, but I feel better when I'm able to express my thoughts and how I'm feeling about what's happening in the universe. What we do on Saturdays, Sundays, and Monday, that's a lifeline for me. That helps me to regroup, and it really enlightens me. It makes me feel liberated. And so I appreciate everything. If it wasn't for us, well, I'm just grateful. That's all I can say. And I remember one time I used to say some things that was kind of like negative, so to speak, we would say. And Pastor used to do this to me. He'll say, shh, shh, like, just don't say nothing else. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Ellen.
Well, this is Audrey. And I've been thinking this all along, but speaking of emotion, when I heard about the mass shooting in Rock Hill, and then learned that it was a Black guy that did it, I mean, that really just struck me to the core, because, I mean, in general, you don't really hear about Black people doing these kinds of things. I mean, certainly you do in like gang-related stuff in Chicago and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, in a case like this in South Carolina, whatever a normal world is, in a normal world, you wouldn't really hear about a Black person doing that. So that really struck me at the core of myself. And then to see his father, them interview his father, and his father just had no words. And I can understand why he had no words. You know, to go from being really proud of your son as an NFL player, and then come to this point where he's done this unspeakable thing. I mean, that just all seems really significant to me in terms of the interplay between who actually committed the atrocity, basically, and who were the victims. And then again, to me, who committed what and who were the victims kind of gets mixed up too. Because as an African American person, you kind of have to take on a certain other identity, and we're talking about identities. You kind of have to take on a certain other identity to be, for him to come to that place, I would think. You know, so I just have a lot of questions and a lot of feeling about that. But I think it was a very significant thing. And I think Kathy touched on exactly what was happening in terms of the spiritual thing that's going on. Because, you know, you can look at it and say who was the perpetrator and who were the victims. But on the other side of it, it's kind of hard to tell exactly who was the perpetrator and who was the victim. I mean, it's like both families were perpetrators, both were victims, if you understand what I mean. But I think there was something really significant in that, and I don't know what, and I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but I know inside of myself, I feel it. And I just wanted to sort of get it out there.
Audrey.
And I believe you.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, I believe she touched on one of the specific issues that both were victims. Both are victims whenever we look at anything. And the people, January 6th, the people who experienced that and were near death kind of thing from those rioters, they were victims. But the rioters were victims too. And it takes a different kind of perception to be able to say that and to stand back. If we look at who Elohim is no thingness. No thingness, meaning there you know, it's like emptying yourself and just being part of nothing. No thingness. When we release our expectations and our judgments and all the attachments of our emotions and feelings, that's when we are in touch with our womb. And I think this is so hard for us in a sense. When I say hard, I mean that, I don't mean that the way it sounds, but it's a struggle for us because that's where we're moving to. We're moving to, you know, we used to say it is what it is. Well, behind that is what it is the no thingness. That everything has meaning. Everything means something spiritually for a purpose. And if that purpose is driving humanity toward this relationship of knowing it is Elohim, it's a bit more difficult to put this in words, express this, but that's part of what we are feeling right now. When I'm at the point where I'm empty, meaning I don't bring my judgment and I don't bring the emotions. I'm just empty. I'm just at the no thingness part. It's at that point when insight can come and wisdom can come, and at that point when we can understand precisely what it is that we need to be doing. It's hard to express this, but we are, you know, everybody's a victim of what has transpired for years and years and years. And part of seeing that is understanding that I am my brother's keeper. And so that expression of compassion and love that Kathy talked about on behalf of that physician's family, and that expression of compassion and love to this young man's family, because he was seen as killing someone else. That's what the bottom line is. That's what, and I don't know how we get more of that. And as you said, we shouldn't have to have these catastrophic things that pull us to this point. So I can't really put in words what I'm saying, but it's that we have to understand that to see balance and to know balance is not to cast blame and to cast doubt. It's just to be. And I can't explain it anymore.
Hey Barb, it's Janice. I hear what you're saying, and I've been sitting here thinking about the fact that we are such an individualistic society, and we like to look at these events and distill them down to the very point where someone pulls a trigger, and we want to blame that individual and completely discount the culture that we live in, the pain that we all experience as a collective, all of the different things that that are part of this organism, right? That we all make up this organism, and we want to just kind of push this one person out and be like, they're broken or they're wrong and they did this evil thing and we have nothing to do with it. And I don't believe that's true. I remember hearing about the officer who meant to pull her taser and pulled her gun and murdered someone. And as strange as it is, my first thought was a sense of horror, because if that's true, then that individual who made that mistake, I can't imagine what kind of hell they're in right now. And it doesn't mean I don't feel the same hell for the parents of because it was a child that was killed, right? In that case, or there's so many at this point.
You, Janice, you're feeling me. That's where I am.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all what it took for her to get to that point, the training that she went through, the culture that she was a part of in that police department, all of that is also to blame for that murder. And I'm like, we can't just pick the single individual out and absolve ourselves as a society, and act like that's it. That's all.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, and also in terms of, what Denise just shared, and we've been talking about, emotion regulation, but, the ability to stay calm under pressure. And I think with the police officer, when we talk about pressure, that's where, again, all of the training that you go through, but when you're in those moments, you know what I mean? And you're caught there, then how do you deal with pressure? And I think that's something that we have to revisit, when we talk about being in situations like that. Because again, the emotion piece is, something again where we need to, try to understand a little bit better, and just in terms of our mental, training. I mean, in terms of the officer, but when you're in those moments, that emotional regulation is important.
Well, and all of that fear that she must have been feeling to make a mistake like that.
She didn't make a mistake.
Huh? She didn't make a mistake. Perhaps I'm being too generous. But, I like to fear another human being that much. the racism that's behind all of that. You just can't look at one person and feel like, okay, it's like that bad apple theory. That doesn't make any sense.
The idea that not only that you can fear someone like that, but you can hate someone to that degree, to where it doesn't even bother you. I keep going back to the 9 minute plus seconds that Chauvin's knee was on George Floyd's neck. The 2 to 3 minutes after he was told there was no pulse, he stayed there. I wish I could get inside of him. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What was your intention? Of course, to kill, but even more deeper than that, are you killing yourself? Or are you acting out the desires of a society? And then I go back to the roots of it all. It is impossible to expect the police department in any country to do anything differently than what it does, because it is simply functioning according to its organizational structure. If there is to be any actions that's going to be reflective of the concept of protect and serve all people, then it has to be totally dismantled and rebuilt on a different foundation. The foundation of the police department has always been to protect white women in particular and the white community in general from the African male in particular and black folk in general. It has never been built on a foundation to protect anything of color at all. No people of color has it ever been designed to protect. And that is the reason that you can have African policemen functioning as though they are no different than the Chauvin's knee on the man's neck. So if our expectation is for the dismantling of a society for the benefit of humanity, then the expectation cannot be that there are bad apples in the police department. No, the whole department is a bad apple. The whole foundation of it is structurally wrong. The foundation is a bad apple. It has to be a pear and not an apple, something totally different, before it can function as it is supposed to, or should function, that is, to protect and to serve. I think that in order for that to happen, we must, not we and just people on this phone, a society must stop making excuses for the unrighteousness of these quote-unquote societal norms. My heart cries out also to people who can kill someone and feel nothing after doing it. In the case of Chauvin's knee on the neck. It also goes out to those who think they can kill someone and not feel it, and then live the rest of their lives having to prove themselves by being brutal, or living the rest of their lives being tormented, by the death at their hands. We simply pass it off as being PTSD, emotional stress, etc. It's easier to say that, but for the person dealing with that, it is hell within itself And I don't know which one is the greater hell, if there is such a thing. The one who is constantly tormented by what they did, or the one who is not tormented at all by what they did, because of seeing skin color and labeling it less than human, thus justifying being able to do what they did. To me, the major thing, the major shift that must take place is within the realm of the police department. Why do I say that? When you get to a place where you respect all life, then everything else follows. The reason a politician can say, it's at my doorstep now, we need to change, is because the politician is not the one with the gun in his hand, killing the people, beating people in the community. He's the one standing back, and he has no feelings towards it at all. So when the ones who are the peons for those who are in power, in other words, when the slave patrollers are changed, their hearts are changed, then the slave patrollers stop doing the bidding of the slave owners. That's when everything changes. Because the slave owners, are the ones who protect the slave patrollers because they're doing their business. So the owners is not going to change. I don't see the owner changing at all. It has to come in the hearts of those who are the physical perpetrators. It's nothing out of life, if that makes any sense. The energy directed towards them is what really knocks down the underpinnings of this society. Comments or questions about that? Am I off base? Please help me.
Pastor, I agree with everything that you're saying. And I wanted to go back, if we can, to something that Audrey said, because it just hit me. She said for the young man, the African American, to do what he did, he had taken on another identity. And I know so much is being said today, and all of it I agree with, and it's good, and it's enlightening, and it's even, like Evelyn said, helping me get to a place of peace on the inside. But when she said that spoke volumes to me. And we talk about the 6 lives that were taken, but he also took his own life. So there were 7 lives lost in that situation because of a lost identity. Can we speak more to that for a moment?
Go ahead.
I'm asking you to speak to it.
Well, the first thing that came to mind, to most of us, is not all of us, when we found out that this was an African man who had killed that done a mass shooting, the first thing came to mind is, okay, what did they do to him? Because we don't just indiscriminately shoot a bunch of people because we hate them. Usually it is someone who has done something to us and we stop at that person. It is in that regard that identity is also called into question. I remember when do you remember the D.C. shootings when the guy was, what was his name, shooting from the trunk of his car and killing those people in that D.C., the DMV, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area?
And labeled the DC sniper.
Yeah, the D.C. sniper, right. Even the profiler said it was a middle-aged white man doing the shooting. And the FBI profilers were shocked to find out it wasn't. But then when they dug a little deeper, they found out that he was not killing as indiscriminately as they thought he was. He was doing it because his plan was to kill his wife, and he wanted to cover that up by killing other people so it would look like it was coincidental and would not lead back to him. Again, the motive was not just indiscriminately killing people as are most mass shooters' motives are. So I took it when Audrey said that about taking on another identity is that he took on the identity of somebody who he wasn't, and that is the Caucasian male. That's how I took it. And I believe if we are honest with ourselves, that's how most of us took it. Because that we don't do. And I'm not saying that derogatory in a derogative manner. It's just a fact. I was talking with George during the course of the week, and one of the things he said to me was, you know, a homeless white man is more apt to approach a black person for help than he is a white male for help, because he knows the heart of that black person will give to him in his need more so than that white male will.
Mm.
Because he knows, even though he's a white man, black folk are not only forgiving, but they will give. They will help you. And that struck me because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
So this identity thing that we are talking about, yes, all of us have this spiritual identity, but when we look at it humanly, also there are differences in how we identify. And in this particular case, this identity that we are talking about is emotional identity. And that carries us right back to where this conversation started, and that is with melanin. It is a known fact that melanin has a greater impact, has a tremendous impact on not just your mental and physicality, but also your emotional state. And it is also impactful to know that without melanin, that melanin does not appear in the periodic chart. And without melanin, there would be no periodic chart because nothing would exist. By the way, that's also an observation made by George Watson. So what I'm saying is this. That shift in identity was taken on an emotional identity of someone else other than the emotional identity that he was reared with. Daddy had no words because Daddy had no way of understanding how this would happen unless Daddy knew that there had been some type of confrontation between them earlier or at a earlier period in that young man's life. So even with the other mass shootings, it is every one of them is said to be unstable mentally, even when it is obviously racially inspired or sectarian. I guess that's a word, sectarianly inspired, because of killing people because of their religion. That is not what we do as a people culturally. That's not what we do. That's all I can say with that one, Kathy.
Yeah,
That's all
that's the same. Those are the same thoughts that I had when she said that, and I didn't want us to miss that because I thought that was important. And listening to about the Caucasian not being a giver, I was at physical therapy yesterday, and a gentleman was in there having a conversation with his therapist, a Caucasian male, and he was talking about not liking to go to a particular town. Said the last time he was in Asheville, he and his family, he and his wife were coming out of a restaurant with their leftover food, plated leftover food boxes to go. And there was a person out there begging. I immediately assumed it was an African American and asked, could he have the leftovers? And he proudly said to the therapist, I told him, I've reared 3 children. I've got 3 sons, and they all got a job. And if you want to eat, maybe you should get one too. And he was proud that that was his response. He didn't take into consideration that he was full. He had just eaten, he and his wife. Their bellies were full. Even for someone to ask for my leftovers that I have eaten from, and they don't even know me, they must be really hungry. He didn't ask him for money. He asked him for the food. And that was his response, and they shooed him away and kept going. So even that ties in. I wanted to share that because it tied right into what you were saying about the compassionate giver, because that's not just something that readily comes easily to them either. And they just don't even recognize. He thought that was the right response. And I don't know, he said that had been many, many years ago that had happened, but he proudly told that story as if it had happened just yesterday because he thought that was the right response in that situation. And I just wanted to share that.
And I'm glad you said that, brought that part out about it had been many, many years since it happened, because him telling that story means he still feels the same way. That has not been a change.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had and you guys may have heard me say this, there's a guy at work. He buys guns, buy ammo, and he was the one I was telling you about that, I've been talking to you, Pastor, bought everybody in his family a gun for Christmas. That was his Christmas present. I think he has 3 kids, so he bought his wife and all 3 kids guns. But he comes to work, he never has lunch money. You know who feeds him? Black females. Black women. He sits there and he looks pitiful, and they bring him lunch. They take turns bringing him lunch and feeding him. But he always has gun. I see him in the parking lot buying ammo from somebody, that worked at a gun range. So I mean, it's just funny how he recognizes, he knows who's going to feed him. They're always going to be there for him. And I don't say anything to him. I don't want to. I almost see it as a message to me. What am I to gain from this? Because it makes me dislike him, and maybe that's something I need to deal with. But I just think that's ironic that he uses his money for things that I think is, regardless how I feel about him buying guns, but he knows that black women are going to take care of him. I just think that's, just kind of stands out to me.
And so I guess the conclusion in talking about identity is that, and I don't know how this is going to come up, and don't too much care, that we have to cultivate a melanated identity. And what I mean by that is an identity that gives us a sense of what? A sense of empathy with humanity, identifying with the stability and the harmony of humanity. And to me, that is a melanated approach. And the reason I say that is because we are givers, protectors, and providers. Would you mute your phone, please? Would everyone make sure your phones are muted? Thank you. Does that make sense, Ron?
Yes, sir, it does. It does make sense.
All right, so that's the identity. I do believe that not only we must cultivate, but I think if we hold on to that and we live that way with that deep desire, then we will begin to see a more rapid manifestation of change in the hearts and minds of people. Excuse me. We are in this earth for the purpose of bringing this sense of identity to all humans, and that the human is to learn that is more than that. We are in this earth to just as the bee pollinates the plants, we are here to melanate the earth, and that's our responsibility. And that's all I have with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And that sort of summarizes where we are and what we are, which is consistent with what we have been doing in terms of our attitude, our perspective, and our awareness. We are the seed for this earth and spreading that balance and that humility and that compassion. Any other questions or thoughts for today? Okay, thanks everyone. Your comments, your questions, your interjections, and as I said, it's what helps drive the discussion. So I thank you, Pastor, for the continued insight as it relates to our identity. I mean, not Black folk only, but humanity's identity. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, and I appreciate you facilitating, and we'll talk with you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.